Let's have a roll call.
Councilmember Ruth.
Here.
I'm doing it by first names, I've decided.
Okay.
School board member Joy. Chair Brian.
Here.
Vice Chair Karina. Member Betsy.
Here.
Member Gail.
Here.
Member John.
Here.
Member Lauren.
Okay, then we will have public comment on any item not on the agenda. We'll also take public comment during each agenda item. Did people get a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting?
Karina Ryan.
We have I'm Ruth.
Yeah.
Hi, Karina.
I'm the
Not much to it.
liaison,
I'm sorry.
city council liaison.
I'm gonna get Karina.
And then, okay. Anybody, no other change, no changes at all to the minutes?
Is there a second?
Going once?
Except for Karina wants to object to becoming.
Well, no, I was gonna say, I think I didn't appear
Right.
in the last minutes.
Let's see.
I came late, and so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but you're listed here as
Like,
present.
oh, got it. Oh, sorry.
And as
Okay,
an
I guess-
indication of
Sorry.
your arrival. Okay, so that all looks correct, then we can approve those by acclamation. Let's talk a little bit about the order of these items real quick, and see if we can reach agreement on how to go through these. It sounds like Maurice wanted to do a brief introduction of the CIP stuff, and then as a first item, talk about the Pelado Park. Within that discussion, we just lost Cindy, but here she comes. We have an information item about Gilman Fields. Is that long, Cindy, or is that?
No, it's
That's a brief
gonna be very brief.
And then citywide conservation plan.
That's brief, right?
So,
That's very brief, yeah.
okay, then maybe we could just do those at the end, and we'll sort of do 5B, and A will get incorporated into 5B, and then just do, oh, sorry, that's 4. 4B, the CIP recommendations will start there. A will get sort of subsumed within B, and then we'll go to 5. That sound okay?
Yep.
And it sounds like we can start with an introduction to the whole CIP process from Maurice.
Okay. I handed out this small 8.5 by 11 sheet with the bullets on it, just to kind of summarize the big staff report that's in here, and to give you an overview of what we were doing here with the CIP. So this is a 5-year capital improvement program, which would run from fiscal year 2015 through 2019. I should say that we haven't really renewed the capital improvement program since 2006, and mostly because of not knowing how much money we're going to have. Typically, we were always on schedule to do it every 2 years, but we got, as we were getting into updating the last time, we started getting word that redevelopment was going to be dissolved, and it was changing our whole funding, the amount of money we had citywide to do projects. So we were holding off to renew it. But we're at a point now where we feel more confident as to how much funding we have available for projects, and so we're moving this forward. What we've done is we've categorized a lot of projects, and they're all kind of in this big spreadsheet. Of course, I just heard that you don't have large enough paper here to copy it in this size. So
Can you read it?
if you can read it, I hope you can. So we've categorized the projects into various categories. We've got community facilities, we've got facilities maintenance, housing, information technology, marina, bike ped, public art, sewer, streetscape system, transportation, and vehicles. So those are the big 5 categories, various categories we have. And then within those categories, we categorize them for priority levels of funding types. So we have funding that's restricted. So we group all the projects with restricted fundings together within those categories. And then all the projects that we were doing for preventive maintenance, we grouped those together. And then there's the discretionary priority level where those discretionary projects, you could do them or you couldn't do them. You know, you could use those funds for anything
No,
you
you
really want to
state
do.
it there. I see.
Exactly.
Got it.
Then, if you look at the table, this big table we did, I just want to explain how this works. So if you see across the top, we've got the estimated available funding as of June 30th, 2014. And then we've got all the figures in that row. That's all the money you can say we have in the bank, the city has in the bank. And there's different kinds of funding there. General capital fund is, and major maintenance, those funds are, it's generally money that the city has discretion over how it's spent. But then you've got like grants, which is restricted, Measure B, public art, all these other funds are kind of restricted monies that could be used only for certain purposes, okay? So across the first row is the estimated amount of money, and below that is the amount of money we think we're gonna get over the next 5 years,
Okay.
okay? So if you look at all the funding we have all together, I guess you didn't say a total there, but if you look at all the projects that we
So,
have, if you look at all the projects we're proposing to do in all these various categories, there's about $95 million worth of appropriations that we're looking for and suggesting that we move forward with over the next 5 years. 95 million.
Cool.
And there's about 9.8 million in unfunded projects. Unfunded. And that doesn't include the big unfunded project like the Ashby Interchange, and we've got a lot of projects that we have, you know, we're not even looking at right now that are in the bike plan or the Parks and Recreation plan. They're kind of like the wish list projects that we're
Those numbers
we still
aren't in.
they're not included.
Okay.
Okay?
So let me see if I understood that. For the 90 million,
95 million?
95 million that is proposed, we think we actually will get something close to that, 85 or 86 million.
Well, yeah, so we're saying that there's about 95 million of projects that we're suggesting to move forward with. And there's about $9.8 million worth of projects that we'd like to do, but we don't have the money to do right now. Okay?
So those aren't recommended?
Well,
Not in the
they're
95?
shown in the unfunded list, but if we hear from the community that, well, let's actually fund those now, then some of the ones that staff was recommending as being funded would have to move off the list.
Oh,
Okay? If we want to do those now.
okay.
Okay?
And the monies that are in the grants category, are those grants that are secured or committed already? Or
Correct. That's money we have received for grants. Now, there's some of these projects where you have to have matching funds for those grants. And that matching fund would typically come from what we're saying general capital. Or maybe successor agency funds, which is the funds that was from the redevelopment agency that we still are able to spend,
Right.
right? So, or trying to spend, I should say. So, with that, if you look at community facilities, I thought what we might do is kind of look at the various categories here. Now, of course, you're the Parks and Rec Committee. You might be more interested in looking at the Parks and Rec projects, but we can kind of look at all these projects
Yeah.
if you want. Kind of go through the various categories. So as you can see in community facilities, we have a number of different parks that we're doing. So we grouped all of buildings and parks kind of projects into community facilities. So 48th Street Community Garden, East Shore State Park, the Palace Street. So what we have is this list of projects, and then of course we have actual descriptions for all the projects
Oh,
in the book. So if you
Okay.
really want to know exactly what we're saying,
yeah.
we can look at the
They're up there
description.
too, John.
And they're up on the computer here, and we've got hard copies. So
Yeah.
if you're interested in details of that. And I should also say that within these descriptions, we kind of show what year we might do the projects,
Okay.
but that's really kind of a stab at it right now. We're gonna really need to see which projects are actually approved, and then go through figuring out which ones we think we have enough staffing to do in the first year and the second year, which ones we need to do right now because of grants or other mandated requirements. So,
Maurice, if I could just, to help people look along, the numbers that are in the left column are written by hand in the corner of each of the pages. So if you
Oh.
say, oh, Horton Landing Park, I wanted to look at that, the number to the left
Right.
is the number.
right, so if you're interested in project number 15, we can go to page 15 in this handout, and we can go directly to the project. All right? Okay, so I guess the question for you guys is how do you want to approach this? There's a lot of projects to talk about. Do you want to have, do you have questions, or how would you like to do this?
So what if this drill down explanation of them is really useful for a lot of them?
Yeah.
And so maybe we would start with a quick overview of the ones that are clearly park or rec related. And then of the things that are in facilities and housing and IT and marina and so on, sort of only talk about those if somebody has a particular interest or question, you know, or it sounds park related or something, you know. And so then, and maybe, although we promised to talk about Pelato first,
So we can pull that one up if you'd like.
what number is that?
It is 42.
So some of the bicycle pedestrian projects would be considered park projects, and it's kind of subjective as to which groups you put them in. So that one could have gone into community facilities, but it was a connection for cyclists, so we stuck it there. So I mean, we could if you look at the way the amount of projects we have in the different categories, 69 million in community facilities, 625,000 in facilities maintenance, 1.6 million in housing, 1.1 million in IT, 1.2 million in the marina fund. And then bike ped, we show 5.6 million, but if you were to include the bicycle pedestrian bridge, which is a really big project,
Really expensive.
and then if you also include a couple traffic signals that are in the transportation section,
Yeah.
we're actually spending 22.3 million on bike ped projects, which is
Yeah.
like 23% of the 95. So it's
That's
a lot, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't do the exercise to say, well, how much percentage dollar-wise are going to parks versus the overall. But we could do that exercise if we wanted to do that. But we have 1.3 million in public art, 2.5 million in sewers, streetscape system. Those are projects that kind of like our landscape medians and our streets, keeping those in good shape.
So Maurice, I have a question for
Sure.
you. Since you do list preventive maintenance in several categories, streetscape system and transportation, it shows up, and let's see, preventive maintenance shows up in community facilities.
Housing.
Sure. Then,
Or no, excuse me.
why isn't Doyle Hollis Park slated for any preventive maintenance?
Why isn't, say that again?
I don't see Doyle Hollis Park for preventive maintenance listed.
So, okay, so that's gonna be covered in our operating budget. The routine maintenance of our parks is covered in our, in any park, and street sweeping and cleaning. Those are typically covered in our operating budget. But if it's capital work that we need to do to the project or to the facilities, like, let's say there's an item in here for facilities maintenance and we show $625,000. And if you went into that project description, number 29, you will see that it's like, when something goes wrong with this building, like the roof starts to leak, or if you have to, if something's wrong with the air conditioning system, or the windows are broken, that's above and beyond preventive maintenance. We have to bring in a contractor to do work on that. We stick it in this category, we would charge it here. But like the regular maintenance of the landscaping at Doyle Hollis Park, or the cleaning of the restroom, that's all routine operating budget kind of stuff. But if we had to re-roof the restroom, that might appear in the facility maintenance.
Okay.
So do you have like a dollar cutoff? Because I was seeing that there were a couple of projects in there, like the Big Daddy's Garden, $15,000. Is that something that could be bumped over into operation budget?
Big Daddy.
It's
Or
24.
Or Davenport
24.
Park, mini park?
I mean,
that
so
was
yeah, so
mostly
the
like
big,
landscape.
yeah, so potentially we could have done that, but then of course the operating budget would have to go up. We wanted to kind of separate out any projects we knew about, like Big Daddy's, there's some improvements that need to be made out there. And so we created a whole new category for that, as opposed to charging it to our operating budget and not necessarily have it planned for it, right? We don't want to, if it's planned work, planned construction work, we'd like to charge that to the CIP as opposed to having something come up and having not planned it during our budget time.
Can you describe what bullseye dogs dog park is? Because I hadn't heard of that before I saw it on the list.
Sure, and we can go to that sheet.
Can we save that till after Pelado? Or we're gonna come to all of those, I
If you,
think.
yeah, however you want to do this. I know Amber would like to go home, so if you want to talk about her.
I'm happy to learn about Bullseye Dog Park.
I think we should have Amber do hers first.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Because otherwise, we're just gonna keep going.
There are a
Right.
lot of questions,
yeah,
I'm
it's
sure.
okay.
about it.
So the reason why we're bringing this project to you, not only is to, primarily is to show you what we're building there, or we applied for a grant, and as part of that grant, we described what would be in the park, and it went through the whole approval process. I believe the city council blessed the design.
Conceptual proposal.
The conceptual proposal. And so we're in the design mode right now, and it's turning out that the price of the improvements, according to our consultant, is going to be more than the amount of money we have on the grant. So which then means that if we want to build these improvements, we need to find some more money. And so we've actually listed here, recommending to approve it, is some additional general capital funds for that project to the tune of what, $300,000? Okay, so that's part of the $95 million that we're suggesting we move forward. Now, if we decide we don't want
That's
to,
the budget you're gonna talk about?
yeah, so if we decide that, well, let's try to cut back on the price of that project, there's some things we could remove and lower that $300,000. And that's what Amber wanted to talk about. If there's anything in the plan that you want to cut out, or do you want to just go with it as it is and recommend to proceed with the money that we're suggesting?
And Maurice's done an excellent job of how this project overlaps with the CIP. If the CIP wasn't occurring tonight, I would have brought this project to you anyway, because it received a parks grant from the state, Prop 84, State Parks Department, and the conceptual proposal was blessed before this committee existed. And we're getting ready to go back to the council with, as we move to bid. I mean, we're not ready right now, but it seemed like it was a good point in the design development to step back and staying within the conceptual proposal already blessed by the council, talk with you about the design, give you an overview, and in that, look at, was there possible cost savings in that broader question. But there are two design elements that we just wanted your feedback on. Specifically, I'm thinking, the last time I was in this room, it was one table and we switched up together, so I thought I'd put my plans like in the middle and we'd have it just interactively. But
You can.
we're now, usually when we come to committees, we're at this stage where it's pretty. Now it's getting ugly, it's just black and white drawings. But overall, I would say that the heart of this project was a continuation of the Greenway, and that's why it's in bike and ped. There are no bikes allowed in this element.
It's pet only.
It's ped only per our general plan.
But we should
There's
say,
nothing in the design that precludes biking as a design element.
yeah, and
So
I don't think the
if
city
policy
council
were to
is saying that
change.
you can't ride your bike there, it's just not designated as a bike route.
And because of the Powell Hollis intersection,
Because
which
we
is
have
so
other
problematic to get
Designated
through.
bike routes.
And there
Go-
are designated
go
bike
through
routes on either side to get to Horton.
People will ride their bike there.
Yeah, and it's
Of
not
course
that
they
it's,
will.
yeah,
Absolutely,
and it's
and we're
not that
putting
they're
bike
not
racks, and
allowed,
that's
but we're
one of
not.
the questions
No,
we're
you're
asking about.
saying either way, it's just.
So it was really in the context of this piece of vacant land, which we did a land swap. This project has been slow in its formation because it survived redevelopment, departure, which was originally how it was to be funded, the grant process, and the swap of land for parking adjacent to it, doubling the size of it. And that's why we got the park grant, because we're doing a little more than just a trail. This isn't the concrete from one end to the other. There's plazas on both ends, there's significant tree plantings, and there was a realization as we were going for the grant, when they generously offered us additional money, that by connecting this element in the southern edge through a short block along Stanford, we had the opportunity to link the Greenway to Horton Landing Park and the bridge we intended on. So we expanded, yes, that's exact. This connects to this by this way. And if I had realized that we would have internet, I would just pull
That's
up.
what it looks like.
Yeah,
Right.
but that's what it looks like. And then right here, if you went to your next sheet for Horton Landing and put it
Yeah.
right here, you'd see these three parks.
Oh.
This is one park element, that
That's
being
cool.
a separately funded park element, all part of the Greenway. And so we, at the time of the grant, hastily, and I do say hastily, drew this and put it into the grant application. And so it had a little less design development, but it is less intensively designed. The real intent of including that element is to make sure there's a visual continuity and a movement continuity between the existing greenway and the proposed improvements in Hart Landing, and that wayfinding is really depicted by consistency of development treatments. We are trying to add more greenscape to what is proposed in that element, and that continues to be reflected as we move through the drawings. But
Let the minutes reflect that Lauren has joined us.
now my back is to
You're fine, no worries.
And so, as we've gotten to the 65%, we are starting to talk about some of the details that staff don't have particular strong feelings about. We don't have a recommendation to you. We thought we'd just talk to you about. There is an opportunity that came out in the community workshops we did for the grant that we received. They really emphasized community outreach, so we had a series of workshops that were very informative, and some of the elements in the design now reflect that. And so it is a higher cost project than what, and it was more competitive for the grant because of that. So that's just some of the background. There were to be 2 windmills at each end of the project.
One of these.
Yes, a total of 2, one at each end. As a cost-saving element, we've already started to talk about at a staff level, and our consultants are reflecting, is the idea of removing one. And one of the overlays to this project is our grant funder approved a set of improvements, and they've been very clear with us. For example, removing geography would put our grant in jeopardy, would put our ability to get additional park funding for the city of Emeryville in jeopardy. So we don't feel like constricting back into the core park is an option. And taking out both windmills isn't an option. That's one of the higher cost elements, but we can take out. It isn't an option to take out both.
Isn't.
Not without an official changing of our grant proposal, review of that, and acceptance of that. We would have to formally revise our scope of work. And so in that context, and I just wanted to give you, in that context, that's why we've said, let's keep one in so that we meet that scope element, but reduce the other one. And perhaps in Horton Landing Park, across the street, maybe answer that with another vertical element as we further refine that later. A drinking fountain was proposed in the project, and it was very far from the intersection, and the elements of bringing water that was potable versus irrigation really changed the economics of that water fountain. And so between those 2 elements, we took out about $100,000 and some other more minor that I'm just not recalling. But so we've already done at a staff level some culling, and we still have a gap of about 200,000. It's
Or 300.
so yeah.
So Amber, the $300,000
Reflects not doing any of those things.
reflects no
Right.
eliminating.
Right, so that's why I'm talking you through them. Because if you said, look, this is higher priority than any other park, let's do 2 windmills, let's do a drinking fountain, we want to do that, then just to understand, the windmills are, and the technology of windmills, when we first started doing this, the company we were going to go with isn't there anymore. So who we will actually buy from.
Is it a generator? Is it?
Yeah, so the intent is to have a micro wind turbine, and we're talking about the kind of technology that looks more like this, rather than a fan. And you want to just pass that around.
Have you been to Chrissy Field, the waterfront?
And I
They have them in front of the restaurant. They're spinning all the time. Of course, it's wind barrel.
Yeah,
A lot of wind
this
there.
company actually put one that's in front of Randall Museum. You could go see it on the top of Randall Museum today.
So it's up high enough to.
Right, to keep
Right.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
What did
still
you think?
And
wondering.
what
how
would
much
it
wind we
power?
get.
Oh, yeah, that's
The
a good
intent
point.
was to have enough power conceptually
good point.
to do the lighting of the greenway. Because it will need to be grid tied unless we want to face additional costs, it won't be a
Sorry,
direct.
can't
right,
hover.
But the idea was to compensate at that level, and I think one of the things, this is a pilot from the parks point of view of, could you put an alternative energy in parks, and does that allow them to not be grid tied? Could you have a self-sustaining park? Will be looked at for some models on that, and will be limited in what we can actually report back. But that's part of what's going on here.
So,
This
so the one-
description here says, this public art, is public art being paid for by the public art
Yes.
thing, and is that not,
Yeah.
so that isn't included in here?
That's its own designated
Um,
funding.
So let me
Yeah,
be
that's another
But,
item.
so, it is not clear that the park itself is triggering the need for the art fee. What is labeled as public art here was how the language was placed in the grant. And one discussion could happen is there a way to make this, the public art that was being talked about are artistically designed bike racks, which I'm about to talk to you about. The paving materials in what would be water droplets. Here you see it as really calling out in blue, and that would be blue within these elements here, and so it would be designed. And the intent was not that there would be public art funding in the project for those elements. The intent had been to be a fully funded grant program project, and then a gap was identified. And whether, the issue will become, will the design process, if it needs to go through as public art, rather than something that is a spec that is put in here, will that change what we need to do for the grant funding that we have, and will it bring that into any jeopardy? And I would say that same criteria exists for the bike racks. That right now we're looking at bike racks that might go back to what was expressed in the community process, the desire to have historical elements. For example, high wheel bikes that modern bikes can be locked up to, or not, probably not, but this is one that already exists today and we could buy from a company, a steam train, but maybe that same company designing something related to streetcars and hearkening back to what was on the Greenway. And maybe that changes along the way, so it shows a transformation from streetcar to trail. But there are many of those kind of options that exist as a company that's already bought them. It might be a marginally higher cost, but not particularly stronger because they've already had to design them. If we need to ask for a specific design, like the electric cars, we might have a higher marginal cost associated with that. And if we wanted to do an artistic bid and have artists design them, it would probably be a significant.
I know that the ones that were designed as bicycles, that are bicycles, that are in the
Public market.
public market, we did talk to them when Ruth had asked to have some bike racks put at Watergate, and Sam Fushi wanted to get a couple of those, and they were kind of, even though they had made quite a few of them already, they were like either $1,200 or $2,000. They're really expensive.
And our budget does reflect that.
So Amber, what is it we need today for this
So-
committee? Because we have a lot of projects we're
Sure.
gonna go through.
So the three things I'm asking of you tonight is, do you agree with the staff proposed cuts that move this towards more like a 200,000? And
No,
of
well,
the
hold on,
200
you're not being clear, Amber. You're confusing me. You said that right now in our executive, we're showing that we need $330,000 in general capital funds
Right.
for the project. That includes, and that is after we cut out one windmill in the drinking fountain, right? Is that correct, or is it less?
Gotta be more than that.
I believe that reflects not taking out those costs.
Okay, so we can bring this
So
down.
you
even more.
could, that your recommendation could be, look, we want this to be fully funded, it's the highest priority. Or you could say, we think that the staff level recommendations that reduce that by 100,000 is an appropriate, and that's what I'm looking for your feedback on. That's
I
one.
think-
Two, yeah, okay, so I'm seeing nods, do you wanna
That's
make a
the easy
motion?
way.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
So
okay,
that's
all right.
one
Well,
out of two
in fact, we're gonna give you more.
windmills.
Right.
Right, right.
Drinking
No
water,
drinking
fountain.
No drinking fountain and no art paving?
No,
I
no
know the art
drinking-
paving will still be within it, that is an integral part of the construction.
It's
You could.
one windmill, you lose.
You lose the windmill and you lose the drinking
Yeah.
fountain.
Yeah.
And so that would bring it, instead of 330, we would bring it down to what, 250 or what?
Right. The other things it's doing is, we're assuming the billboard which was reflected in a cost in this project, will be resolved by the developer, the landowner with which.
I don't think they're familiar with the building. There's
Yeah.
a little billboard.
There's a little billboard sitting right here in the Powell Hollis intersection.
You're gonna give
Is
it
that
This
electric?
project proposes, no, it's not electric, and it's very small.
Okay.
But it's encroaching. And
What
so
happens
there's
to
a
it?
process.
Goes
We're
away?
getting- we're
The
getting
intent
rid
is
of
to
it.
have it,
Yes.
Thank you.
park proposal. The windmill, to reduce the number of green screens is a proposal too, to save about $10,000. And instead of having 4, having this more in mid and larger and just reducing those costs. And reducing the hardscape in this part of the project and removing the tree grades. So that's a fairly high capital cost associated with tree grades just for the sheer number. So between those elements, it's a hard cost savings of $88,000 and the soft costs associated bring that to $115,000. So the new gap is $215,000 from that original $330 that's on the CIP by making those changes. And of that gap, $73,000 is associated with capital improvements in the intersection between the two. Related to the pork chop and the way you get from this side of the street to this side of the street.
So if
And I
I can
had,
clarify that, if I can clarify.
Yeah.
So if you look at the design, as you come along the Greenway from Powell, you get to the intersection of Paladue Street, there's some intersections modifications at Paladue that needs to be done. The grant wouldn't cover it because it's not part of the park. So we have street improvements, we need to modify the islands that are there, or eliminate them. So that's part of the cost that we have to pay from the city funds.
so that even if you tried to make this bare bones, that still wouldn't be something we could ask the grant to do.
So, Maury said the same, so you said we started out with 330, right? And then you said, okay, we're taking out 100 with the windmill and water fountain. So we're down at 250.
215, of which 73,000, regardless of the decisions you make, you
So
still.
you could still chip away another 73,000 if you wanted. So
No, you could still chip it at 140.
You could chip
But-
away another 140.
But you said fewer screens, no tree grates. Is that on top of? So I'm having trouble doing the math. So we
Right.
got down to 215.
And I would be happy to share this sheet, which is what I'm using just to answer your questions. If that's helpful too, I'd be happy to make copies and hand that out. But the total savings proposed by staff of $115,000 includes all of the elements
That you're mentioning.
That I mentioned.
So getting to 215
Tree
includes the
grades, green
trees,
screens.
includes green
Yeah.
screens,
All of those,
and less hardscape?
yes.
Okay.
Question for you. Do you know offhand how many bike racks go through the whole thing and what the total cost of the bike rack part was, roughly?
So there are 2 segments of bike racks up at the front of the project near Powell Hollis. And then by the active space here in this alley here. And it's bike parking for, I think, so 4, 8, and 12.
So why if someone,
But how much did that cost?
Uh,
why if this is not designated as a bike boulevard, why if this is a linear park that most people be traversing through and not necessarily staying, why are we putting bike racks in here?
So there are 3 answers to that. One is that if we're asking people to get off their bike, then we want to give them a place to secure that and become pedestrians in
And
space.
what points of interest would
So-
lure people off their
Sure,
bikes?
and I haven't talked about this as a park space, and that's gonna be my 3rd question, which we haven't gotten to. But, is that the council moved specifically to expand the space. This could have been a narrow ribbon that was just a traverse through. We got park grants and we went through the land swap process to add depth to this. So we have a green space that is AstroTurf here, and we have what is called the living room in this project. And it's across from outdoor patio space that is proposed by Broken Rack.
And so this space has festoon lighting over it. It has what is being called coffee tables, a place to put things down, stay, play music, interact as a
Barbecue?
community. There is not a barbecue in the space, but if someone were to bring their own Weber to it, that they can talk to the fire department. But it's supposed to be flexible space. And one of the questions is it activated enough with that flexibility? Or my third question to you is, do you see a need to more, to put any kind of improvement into the AstroTurf lawn area to make that either more dog-friendly, more kid-friendly, more structured, chessboards, any element that you think would activate that?
How big is the turf?
I was knowing that I needed to know that, but I think it's 10 feet wide.
That's in the living room, you're saying?
No, the
No.
turf.
The turf
They're about the
itself.
same
That's that
space.
space right there.
Yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
You had a scale?
There's
It
a
looks
scale,
like-
there's a scale right there.
Yeah.
And if you
More than
can-
10.
The
Okay.
scale
So-
is,
Is this honor bar here?
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
honor bar.
that's honor bar.
That's gonna be the billiard club.
So
Okay.
10
And
feet
this
is,
is the office.
10
It's-
feet is from here to here.
10 feet's
So
the
it's-
width, it's the
Well,
width.
that's a
of it.
PDF, I actually have
So that looks
actually,
like it's 15.
it's
That looks like
20
it's a-
wide.
Oh, 20.
Oh, the
Yeah,
lawn?
no, yeah, that's,
That's
Okay.
right.
yep, it's 20 wide and then 60 long,
Okay.
60 by 20. Okay. So it's not a ball field, but it's a space you could throw a ball.
So when I was looking at it from public works standpoint, of course it'd be nicer to have a lawn, but it's a lot more to maintain and a lot more water.
And the
Real
grant
grass.
doesn't want to give us
Drainage.
money to
All-
build grass.
So the question is, do you
Build
want,
grass
do you
fields.
want this as space where, like a turf area, or would you just prefer this just to be more regular landscape?
What if you, I mean, cost-wise, like turf is $10 a square foot? I mean,
I don't know, but it's more actually, it's more expensive in a way because you gotta build all that sub-drainage.
right,
Yeah.
right. So, it's not gonna be, unless the vision is that it's gonna be a field, I mean, you could theoretically do, pavers surrounded by beautiful river rock and spend less money.
Well, River Rock people throw, I mean, we had River Rock that
That's
dug up,
a
and they were
bad
throwing it, and we dug up. You gotta be careful with that, but it's more, do
But
you
you
want to
could
stay friendly
put-
landscaping, grasses,
Right, you
natural
could
grasses?
put creeping thyme or something in there, you could.
But on the
right?
other hand, whenever we put in these bay-friendly landscaping gardens, we've got the dog walkers that are walking through there, and the plants are just dying.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if you do pavers with
They're peeing on
small,
them, and it's just,
Yeah, kills them.
so that's what I'm saying, if you do a paver with, so it's like a,
pea gravel.
no, but if you do like a chessboard, but there's, in between the pavers, you can put, small,
Some kind of fescue
It's like a
or
hardscape,
something.
is
Yeah.
what you're saying. A
Yeah.
hardscape, more hardscape?
Hmm.
I don't know.
Well, it's not solid hardscape, it's pervious hardscape
hardscape.
with like cells of planting in between the pavers.
something like that. I mean, I don't know if that's less expensive than putting in turf.
It's probably at best $100,000 to save them, right? I mean, you're not talking
But my-
big money.
Which, anything that's gonna need the
Right.
drainage, that's where the cost savings is gonna come, is if you don't.
But if you do pervious, something like that, you're not talking about the same kind of substrate as you would have to put in under turf.
The reason I was asking about the bike racks is if you did have a proposal for these, different looking bike racks that somehow tell a story as they go along or something, that sounds to me like something you might be able to get the public art committee willing to pay for. And you could shave a little bit of money off of your expense.
And
You
then,
you don't have to come, mess up your grant because you're still doing the exact same thing you said you're doing. You're just paying for it.
can't you just say to the public grants people that, it's costing more than you expected and you actually have grant money that you can use
They,
to pay for
the
part of
grant
it?
funders would love, just as they love to see the CIP say, we'll put 300,000 in general fund rather than changing the
But I mean,
scope
would
of
they,
it.
do you think that they would then turn around and say, well, we're gonna take back, if you're gonna get 30,000 for this, we're gonna take 30,000 back?
No, I think what they wanna see is the scope of the project realized, and what they're concerned about us is taking.
Yeah, so that's what I think, is that we should try and take anything that can be perceived as public art and,
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of
They may not
money
pay
in
for
there.
pavers, right? The public art committee is not gonna pay for pavers, but fancy looking bike, maybe.
And I think the issue will be timing. I think that is something that could be of interest to the Public Art Committee. I am staff to the Public Art Committee. I'm aware of interest and possibilities. It hasn't been on the table. It's not like it continues something that's been in discussion. It's a new proposal and we need to be better at that. And the Art Committee is going to be looking at, on Thursday, a public art master plan. And things like ways you can put art into parks or gateways or continuous things will be in that conversation, I'm sure. But this is ahead of that. And
Does
so
it
the
have
question,
to be interesting? I mean, can't you just use those little half-circle bike racks? I mean,
absolutely, and that's kind of the question is, for now, do we just want to go with the cheapest, easiest bike rack in this park, and you, the park committees, are interested in hearing if the public art committee ever comes back with some interesting art?
Yeah.
And that was, I wanted that to know that point. The point about the budget, which it sounds like you were unanimously, and you made a motion about that. I'm not sure if you want to make motions. And I'm asking for that.
What
because it'll
about
help
the
me
wind
with-
turn? You're keeping one, what's the purpose of the one and how much, is it not gonna look like that one? Or is it gonna be a real turbine?
So
And
we have
what's the
never talked about
production
putting,
and what is it for and all that?
so we have never talked about a full-scale windmill in terms of blades. We've always proposed this and in the grant talked about it as a micro.
That
wind
one?
turbine. And not that one.
Not
I
that
just
one,
want to
okay.
step back one more second. What actually happened was in the planning commission, it was suggested that we could have sort of an iconic windmill,
I see.
evocative of the biosciences in
I see.
Emeryville and our sort of tying stanchions from railways and
I see.
DNA and that historic and that future, and having this be sort of an icon while at the same time having environmental features that are generated to the extent that the site is good for that. And we haven't done wind assessment. That wasn't the way that this got proposed. It really got proposed
So
as
it's
that
for a
icon.
visual thing.
Yeah, it was out of the designers talking about monuments on it, and then it got turned into a functional element,
Right.
and in part because of the water towers. So it
Oh,
was the idea
there
of
was
the
a
water
tie.
tower in Berkeley, the water tower in Emeryville. What could you bring down the Greenway to link it almost, across the cities?
So, and when we do we're gonna have to select what the turbine looks like,
Yeah.
right? And so when we get approval of plans and specs from the city council, we can show pictures of that. Maybe there'll be some options that we can look at, right?
We can see how much it produces and what we,
But we're not, without really doing a wind study, I don't think
well, no, what it's capable, those are only, you have to have 30 miles an hour to get 1,000 watts. I mean, that's a lot of wind.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
It's not
and,
gonna
and so we
produce any-
will be looking for any technology that can be generated, that can generate power at the lowest volume and strength of wind. That is a criteria we'll use for anything we are.
fair enough.
but you're saying the grant funder it wants a windmill.
Whether they
what
want
they
that, we are
approved.
now
That's what
in
they
a process where they've approved it, and so
If
our
you
ability
change
to
that,
is problematic.
so even if you found out that there was never a hint of wind on that corner, if you went to them and said there's no wind, it's not gonna do anything, they have to redo the whole thing.
They would see that as us creating a new problem for
Got
them.
it, okay.
So, I think we might be able to wrap up for you and give you the motion that you want. And here's my suggestion, we'll see if everybody else thinks this captures things, is, well, we're just starting to look at all these things, so we can't really say, maybe definitively, where this falls on our priority list. But I've looked at the other things that are park related. There's a lot of places where we need money, right? And I don't think we're gonna tell you this is our top priority. Just take a stab at it now and tell you that. But, so what we probably, I think, would agree is the staff suggested recommendations of, cutting the water fountain and one windmill and other, small changes to get it down, we think are a good idea. We also would recommend that you take any elements that might be of interest to the Public Art Committee and propose them to them as a potential, something they should fund in order to further reduce your costs. And sort of in general seek other ways to reduce the cost, you know, wherever you can, you know, because I don't foresee us placing this, you know, above a community garden or, you know, some of the other things that we'll talk about next, right?
Right, particularly since it seems to be a well-designed,
Yeah.
very thoughtful, you know, process, so it's not like we're, you know, taking it out, it's just
Not
like.
that it's not a good project,
Yeah.
it's just that there's too
Okay, so-
many good projects.
Okay,
Right.
so,
It's also got almost $700,000 of funding that's being given to us, so we don't wanna throw
Right,
that
and
at
I would say that from a
Right.
staff point of view,
879,000.
anything that is leveraging outside
Yes,
funds
yeah.
is a
High priority.
critical priority in as much as we wanna then go back to those same funders to get that community garden, or,
Right.
so we wanna produce a full and complete,
Yeah.
on time,
Make your
beautiful
funders happy,
project.
don't degrade it so much that you anger them, for sure.
Right.
And in
No, that's-
response to that, I think it is important to keep an active area with its turf. Sounds fine, it'd probably be as well used as anything else out
the
there.
turf, leave it as green turf, the astroturf?
In the absence of a different proposal, you
Yeah.
would
leave
say
it as it-
Do
keep
you
going
want
with that
real-
unless they
Gail, do
said.
you want real turf
No,
or
no,
astroturf?
no.
And I will say that would be
Low
more
floor.
problematic than
Yeah.
taking out the windmills. I mean,
Yeah.
the Parks Department does not wanna be using its grants to put in green lawns. They wanna see what we can do that's bay friendly, how do we make that active space, does AstroTurf work in this urban model? That's-
Okay.
No, there's not, I mean, turf can be, as you know, lots of different levels of.
Yeah.
There's some pretty good looking stuff
There's
out
some
available
great looking
now.
turf, yeah.
There's some stuff that you really have to get close to
Looks
to
like grass.
figure out that it's not real
Yeah.
grass.
So I tried to
Um,
summarize our feeling, people agree with that?
I do.
Yeah,
So Betsy, that's a second. All those in favor?
Right.
Does the
We
broken rack
unanimously
have
gave you that
any,
suggestion.
you know, they're gonna be right there, do they?
So
They're
the broke,
renting, they're not
Right.
buying.
but
there's
Who?
14,000.
right, so the broken rack is paying for the cost of the pavers and improvements that they will be encroaching on.
Okay.
So, that part.
Okay, that's one out of 75 projects?
Yeah, so,
They're separate.
I should have got dinner or something, huh?
yeah.
My apologies and my thanks for
Yeah.
the hard work.
So
Thank you.
I suggest sort of lightning summaries, and we'll stop you if, you know, we need more information. Like,
Okay.
here's an example, right? 48th Street Community Garden is a proposed project. It doesn't exist now. There already is some $50,000 of grant funding, but to do the whole project, we'd need 120 grand over the next 2 years. And this is located at, you know, 48th Street. There's, you know, like 4 sentences.
I would
Or-
give
or I
you
would-
a shorter
what I could
and
do-
different description
Yeah,
of that.
so
It's
I
fully
like that.
funded by another source you
Let's
can
do it
use for
this way.
anything
Okay,
else.
okay, yeah, so I was
Yeah,
just
okay.
trying to give a,
So if we could just look, let's just start from the top and go down, okay? So
Can
mean,
I,
if you
can I
have-
get clarification? So
Sure.
on the things with restricted funds, basically, we're saying, yeah, this is a good idea, we don't need additional funds for it, why wouldn't we do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, these restricted funds are essentially projects we have grants for, so I don't think there's really much decision-making we need to
Okay.
do there.
Unless you
And
wanna
you're-
give the money back.
Right?
And
Okay.
you're not looking at a one through, you know, rearrange all the numbers on the whole thing. You're
Right,
just
okay, so the first 7 are really grant projects that we're gonna do. Community garden, we're actually, the East Shore State Park, we have a $400,000 grant, or the park district has money in escrow, 400,000, and we're asking for 100,000 to match it so that we can build a bioswale and fix our flooding problem we have over on Powell Street. Of course, we've got the Center for Community Life shown in here. There's $21.8 million in bond funds that were coming from the successor agency. That's restricted money that has to go in there. The skate parks there, the South Bayfront Bridge
before you get off
project.
skate park, is that, do you need more money now, or is that,
Well, this 195 is what we're proposing to do for this 195. We need more money. The 195 is essentially the money we have right now in WW funds that's in the Horton Landing Park project. And that project kind of in hold right now because of the state and the challenge of the use of those funds. So what we're suggesting is that we move those grant funds over to the skate park to be able to cover the difference in funds we need for that project. So we applied for the money to use it on Horton Landing Park. That project, we don't know when that's gonna happen. So we wanna do our skate park now, so we're gonna ask the park district if we could use the money there instead. Okay. Horton Landing Park, South Bayfront Bridge at $16 million, and then we've got a couple of grants for the transit center at the Amtrak station, just north of the Amtrak station. We got $1 million from, actually it's $834,000 plus a match from a developer, so that's $1 million. And then there's $8 million from grant, or 4.2 in grants from the STIP funds, and successor agency money is about the same amount for the transit center. So the next category of projects in the community facilities are sort of preventive maintenance projects. 61st Street Mini Park Rehab, I think you'd be interested in. We need to do.
You know, Gail's interested.
Yeah, Gail.
Well, actually, I went out and I looked at the play surface and it is falling apart, it's all cracked and then that, but do we need to replace the play structure?
We
It looked like
probably
it was
don't,
in
but we
the-
want to take a good look at it, because if we do replace the surfacing, that means that play structure is going to be there for another 10 years. So if we see that it's in good shape, and all we have to do is replace a slide here and there over the next 10 years, we probably end up reducing the cost and not do the play structure. But we really haven't put a lot of design effort into it right now. But we've got a budget here to replace it if we need to.
I don't
That's
think
what
you
the
should.
picture
I'm with you, Gail.
So if we don't have to do it, we're definitely not going to do it.
This is across from Doyle Hall? Is it
Yeah,
that
the
one?
small
Yeah.
town
It's
letter.
the little,
Exactly.
That's
the
It's
first
It's
Scale.
the
the first
61st
park
Street
and then we
Mini
go.
Park rehab, is that what?
I think it's probably one of the first parts.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
it was
play
the first
structures
park,
are
and-
in pretty good shape, and it's
They're
only for
used.
the littlest kids,
I know,
because
they're still
anybody
being
else is
used.
going across the street.
Yeah.
But I think we want to take a good look at it, make sure that the way this is worded, the budget would include
I'm
a
still worried
play structure,
about
but we probably would do it
finding
if
on
it's
the
in good
roof
shape.
of the shed there and going over
I
your
haven't seen it
property.
in a
I
long.
think that.
Because this would be an
Equipment there is-
opportunity
Yeah.
if you need a higher divider or something to put in the request.
What we need is new
And
footings on the
kids,
fence. 'cause
We need the
is
fence,
going-
right,
Playing
the
there,
fence.
playing
Does that
there.
include the
Yeah.
fence?
They're older kids and they
We'll
get
get the fence with it.
No, so John and I are over here having a side conversation. In our experience at this park, the structures actually are pretty poor. And if they stay there another 10 years, it'd be even, that'd be a
Yeah,
bad
you're
situation.
looking at a picture of a different park.
That's not
though.
the park.
That's not the park.
Yeah, that's not it. But
We know.
But let me say this though, on, even if the structures are in good shape, sometimes the code changes and you've got to make sure you've got the right clearances and everything. So it's really a big investment when you do the play surfacing, so you've really got to look at the structure.
You gotta do the structure, because if you have to
Well,
redo.
The footings are underneath and everything.
And what happens is if there's not a good structure there for the littlest kids, then they go and they play on the Doyle Hollis structures that are really
They're not
intended for
supposed to
larger
be there.
kids, and it's dangerous, right? I mean,
It really is.
All right, so the other project I have in here, the next one down, the Child Development Center rehab. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that building, so there's $775,000 in there. And then there's other preventive maintenance projects like at the Civic Center, like Civic Center carpeting, exterior painting of the building, the conference level at the garden level. We've been proposing a rework of that.
For
give them a
years.
bit.
Yeah, so we've been holding off. Yeah. The HVAC system is in really bad shape, so we've got money for that. The big project is the corporation yard improvements and an emergency operations center. That's like $6.3 million.
But don't we have FEMA money as
We were
part of that?
hoping, we put
thought
in
we
a
had some
grant, we
FEMA
put a
money.
grant, well, we have some FEMA money, but it turned out that money was not for this project, but it was for the ECCL.
The gym,
The gym.
the shelter.
Right.
But I thought there was, I thought some went to this too, DEOC.
We did, we got some FEMA money from,
For
it was
both
for
things.
both at the same time, and we actually did the work already. So that FEMA grant, we already spent the money to requisite the
Okay.
building.
Okay.
That work was already done.
Can I ask something? I think I sort of alluded to this a little bit when we went over this at the bike pit committee. For me, it's really a little bit confusing to see the parks mixed in with the corporation yard and carpet and paint and HVAC, because if you look at if you consider those community facilities in the line of parks, then everything really could go into this group.
Well,
You
we
know,
haven't,
bike ped things could certainly go in there, and it just seems to me that for the Parks and Rec to actually look at this. And also I think that as far as the city council's concerned, I think that personally, that they shouldn't throw all of their money into, you know, one huge project. I think that they should, you know, have certain amounts of money for different types of projects, and that one way to do that is to break out. I think the parks should be broken out into a separate category, just as housing and IT and bike ped and all the other
We
categories.
could definitely make a subtotal so that we can look at these numbers in different ways. We could definitely rearrange these and group them so that it's more obvious how much money is going into parks. We can
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I just think it should have a separate category. I mean, it is a separate category. It's not the same type of thing as
It's a community
corporation.
facility, I mean, yeah, I mean, we
Well,
could,
but I mean.
we
but
could have
pet
community
things are
facilities, parks, you know, we could have community facilities, buildings, if you want. you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be
Well-
broken down into different categories.
It may make it easier for us to focus on parks.
Well, we're here now, though, so let's.
I'm sort of creating
Yeah, let's not talk about
the
parks.
sheet that
Yeah, so that.
Betsy's asking for. I'm trying to
Yeah.
tease out the ones
Okay,
relevant
that
to
sounds
park and
like
rec.
a
That's a
good
good idea.
Okay, so then the next one we had Davenport Mini Park rehab. So that's the little park on the peninsula, $25,000 for that. Essentially to redeck the deck out there and some landscape work. We have a project for the emergency generators, you're probably not interested in that. Fire station rehab, senior center. Senior center, are you interested in that? It's not a park, but it's recreation, parks and recreation.
It is recreation, but
Where
it
is that?
sounded like it was
That's,
necessary.
It's not
Where is
like
that?
parks.
Senior center on Salem.
It's on sale.
That
is rec.
That's
It's
right.
rec.
That's right.
How much are they putting in there?
$1.9 million.
Oh, that's a lot of money. They gotta give that
It
more.
sounded like it was necessary.
Yeah.
And that's something that's fairly and just a lot of that money
It's
already been
different.
spent in design and architects' fees and.
Can we have one conversation? You guys doing your thing?
Some of it
You guys
has been-
listening, or-
They're just trying to
Senior center?
break it
But
down a
it's
little
fairly
bit.
far along, isn't
How'd
it?
2.2 go to senior center?
Well, yeah, but also there's been
That's
some
on here. I
unexpected,
think that's-
like
is
the
that
boiler
2.2?
needed.
Yeah.
Senior center is 1.9 million.
Where'd you get 2.2 for million for the senior center?
They got
I
it
think that's
wrong.
what it says.
No, it says
1.9.
1.9.
1.9.
So with the corporate.
Right here, the total cost?
Yeah.
Oh, so
Oh, okay, you gotta, so,
it's 1.9 is what we
yeah,
need.
so the total, these aren't total costs, these are, this doesn't include any money we put into it to date, okay? So this is
This
like
is money that's.
money that we
on
need to
top
put
of
into
it.
it from here on,
Oh,
okay?
This is what you're asking for, is what we're
Right,
looking
this is
at.
what we're asking for, okay? So, 1.9 for the senior center,
right.
Shorebird Park Boardwalk, that's, you know where Shorebird Park is, right? That's the one next to
Yeah.
Chevy's along
Yeah.
the Bay Trail?
25 grand.
Okay, so we need to preserve the wood pilings that are beneath the
Oh.
boardwalk
Yeah.
before they rot away.
Is
So
that
we
enough
do a little
money?
project.
Oh, no, a lot of money.
Well, yeah, but it's working within the mud there, so.
Okay.
And there was, I can't remember how many piles there are, there's quite a number of them that we gotta wrap.
Yeah.
Stanford Avenue Park Rehab, $145,000.
That's a
Not
lot
that
worse
much.
shape than Dortmund.
Way worse,
Than the
way
mini
worse,
park.
absolutely.
What's that?
Bullseye Dog Park, so you want to know what that is.
Yes.
And it's listed here as unfunded.
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
But we got a
funded right now.
request from the Evil Eye blog person,
Rob,
Rob Arias. He lives at 1500 Park, and they're looking for a dog park that they could use during the rain. And his idea was to put a park underneath the 40th Street Bridge, right behind the Target store. So we kind of control that area in our, in our agreement with Oakland, underneath the bridge. So if we wanted
it's
to
not
take out,
Caltrans.
it's not Caltrans. So if we wanted to take out the ivy that's growing underneath the
Yeah.
bridge and make that a dog park, dog run area, that's what this proposal is.
How do you, what do you think?
What is Bullseye
Well-
on Hollis Street? There's a sign hanging off of that, one of those buildings that says Bullseye. Tell us what they do.
I haven't seen that one.
No, that's Bullseye Glass.
Bullseye glass.
It's Bullseye Glass.
So what do you think of this?
Okay, so
It's a glass
Artistic
company.
glass and
It's
a gallery.
it's totally
Oh.
unrelated.
It's a big
Yeah,
space
like
out
this.
there, right?
It's Bullseye
glass.
Glass. It's
They have-
the name of
they
the
have-
company.
Yeah,
It's the name of
is.
the company.
Yeah, it's
So,
wonderful. You
Um,
should go to the gallery there, it's really cool.
what I think is, I don't know if you guys saw this, I brought this up in the Economic Development Committee. I'm all for dog parks and, it's getting rid of ivy and having a place having it less, friendly for people to live under there, all for that, lights, all good, you know, that it would be used, but
770.
Yeah.
I also think, and there are, don't, you know, jump all over me, I love
Yeah,
kids,
yeah,
I
go
have
ahead.
kids. There are more dogs in Emeryville right now than kids, so, yes. So it is a good use of funds. However, I think that one thing that's been done really successfully in San Francisco is that communities in Dogpatch and Potrero have gotten together and taxed themselves to help create parks. So I think that our friend at 1500 Park should pony up something for this. I mean, I think it should be, you know, that there should be ways of encouraging the community. Like, if you really want this to happen,
So I don't know if everybody's seen that space right now, but right now it's a homeless encampment.
I'm saying, which is great, clear it out.
When it gets rainy, when it's wet weather,
Right.
the people.
Or cold.
It's covered, yes, so that's where they go.
And I think Target should participate, but
Yeah.
So anyway, and then remember, you know, it is in Oakland, so, that's, so I mean,
Okay.
it's a project we can do, it's just a matter of prioritization. So,
What do
know,
you think
let us
about
know.
using that space under there? I'm just kind of curious, just in general, for.
Well, right now,
kind
in
of just-
Oakland, we don't maintain it.
Yeah.
If we are gonna build a dog park there, Oakland would make sure that we maintain it, so it's just another,
So,
Operational
another
costs.
thing. I mean, so when do we really look at these?
Okay, so- okay, so,
Overview just related to the park impact fees, some things we've been looking at about need and costs and structure of different financing mechanisms. As you know, I am to return to the committee to talk to you about the impact fee. At this point, that's planned for April, and as a prelude to that, we've been trying to look at, well, as we look at a variety of fees across the city, what's the need, what's the gap? And the CIP, we summarized that park needs that weren't funded by another source. So for example, the 36th Street Community Garden has housing funding if it were to proceed as a community garden. Or, the grant we just talked about, and those grants, or developers at Sherwin-Williams or something like that. It was 1.5 million. And so one of the questions was, could a park impact fee cover that 1.5 million over the next 5 years? Certainly it could do that. What additional capital project that was like a new park that wasn't yet considered in these kind of, the tricky thing will be, the park impact fee is gonna have to do something that increases the capacity. So it's either, a bullseye dog park that creates a new park, or something that intensifies the use. It can't be that maintenance task.
all right, let's continue here. So I stopped at Bullseye. So the next one on here is the 36th Street Community Garden. We showed that as 162,000. I think the housing committee was thinking that we might want to ask the city council just to sell that property as opposed to.
That
doing
was
it.
the recommendation from the housing committee, was to sell it.
There's a little property on
What was their
36th,
reasoning?
36?
between Adeline and San Pablo.
Okay.
So, because when I saw that one, I thought this is a really interesting idea. I mean, the Ambassador housing project that's nearby there is already full of people, right? Folks have moved in, and we've got this space of, property sitting next to it. If we could even use housing funds to make it a nice space for the people in the housing project, I was like, genius, right?
Somebody has to run it. So if you have a willing operator, if you can give it to them and they can operate it, it's all on their own and it's
Well,
not city.
and this whole enterprise actually tonight made me realize that this committee needs a community garden representative, right? That there are people who are in the community gardens all the time, and we don't have them represented here. And that would be really helpful, because they might tell us, we'd be glad to take on more space, we're looking for more space,
He's in charge of it in the other community garden. He has a lot of information about it. He's a master gardener and knows what's involved.
And Vicky is on the housing committee, and she spoke quite a bit about Big Daddy's garden. and what needs to happen there.
So we have access.
So as proxy, I have talked to Sam, Vicky, and a number of West Oakland community garden and urban farming entities. And nobody has said, this is a great site, we really want to partner with you. The scale of it, the proximity to the freeway, much of the cost that's there as a capital cost is about assessing lead. And we have applied for a TAB grant to do that, and we'll pursue, that's in, and we're pursuing that. But that's, the capital costs of this are the possible removal of soil, the assessment, plus the capital improvements, and there isn't a provider.
Right, okay, so yeah, it makes sense you don't wanna grow tomatoes underneath the freeway and get all the lead from the cars on them. Okay, I get that now, but,
Without the sun.
I mean, we do have kids that have moved into the ambassador housing. Maybe what we need there instead is play structures, or, like, before we just give away this property.
I don't think you give away, you sell it.
Sell it.
Well,
Sell it.
I mean, it's not like we're gonna be able to buy a
It's all
comparable
taxing
piece of
entities.
property right next to this housing.
Accessory.
If somebody were to buy it, they're gonna build a house or gonna do something,
Development.
develop
Yeah,
it.
it's not gonna be play space for kids. It's not gonna be a park.
That is fine.
But anyway, okay, so, do you want a recommendation on that from this committee, or?
Let's hear them all first.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we have the art center in here, which you may be familiar with, just near the Civic Center. Big Daddy's Community Garden for $15,000. Some improvements that we need there. We had money in here for, not funded, for the Emery Go-Round Shuttle Bus Yard. Because they don't have a permanent home and they're trying to find a place.
Oh, okay, so I think you can start skipping quite a bit and focus on the ones that we've pulled out on the board here. They seem most park related or rec related to me.
Okay, so did you put 27, Point Emery Shoreline Protection,
Point Emery, yeah.
$300,000?
Yeah,
Can't
Okay.
forget that.
we can't forget that.
Okay, and then Temescal Creek Park, Adeline Street Connection.
17,000.
So we had $17,000 there, and that was essentially gonna pay for a design, come up with a conceptual design, not a final design, but a conceptual design. And then ideally, we would work with the Scuola Vilengüe to help build it. And I don't know if they would give us the money and then we would build it, design it, or whether or not we would, hand it off to
They'd
them.
probably prefer to write a check.
I would imagine they would, yeah. Okay, so then, where are we?
Hollis Street Fire Station?
The Hollis Street Fire Station is another unfunded project. We've got quite a bit of work to that
They
building.
want, they just
That's
want
not park
to
or
Go to Marina.
A lot of money.
Marina Park.
Okay, the Marina Park, we can skip down to the Marina.
39.
Right, so those essentially would be improvements to the existing park area and all the landscaping there. Essentially what this money would do is would cover some maintenance work or preventive maintenance work we need to do on the restroom. So we've got that, the building needs to be painted on the inside, replace some of the corroded fixtures on the inside. And then there's some work that we need to do to the parking lots down there, slurry sealing them.
We're talking about 1.2 million, right?
No, we're talking about 225,000.
Oh, 250, okay, yeah, sorry.
Isn't the Marina Fund one that has a pretty substantial reserve and
There's a
balance
big
at the
reserve
end?
there.
So,
Yeah, there's,
okay,
yeah, we're.
sounds good to me.
So does a reserve, why is it listed as unfunded?
Nothing is,
It says discretionary 225,000, it's in the same column.
It's
as the-
discretionary it's a Marina Fund, it's discretionary in that if the
Oh,
city
this is not
council,
funded.
we show it as discretionary because it's discretionary money. It's the Marina Fund, but that money doesn't have to stay in the Marina Fund, we can move it around,
Why
right?
don't we move some of it around?
Potentially, that's something that the city council might want to consider. All right, so moving on down to bicycle pedestrian categories. We've got 40,000 in sidewalk improvements throughout the city. Christie Avenue Bay Trail. That's a new trail on Christie Avenue between Howell and Christie and Shellman and Christie, right in front of the Black Bear Diner there.
Oh, right,
Okay. That's fully funded by a grant.
right.
Uh, The Emeryville Greenway from Stanford to Powell, we spent about a half an hour talking about
More
that.
like now.
Yeah, those are all restricted funds, yeah, so.
Horton Street experimental traffic calming measures.
That's not park.
So that project is,
That's not park, that's not park.
that's not park, so maybe you don't wanna talk about
I think we may be done,
Yeah,
that.
there are no more parks listed on this.
or even rec related, really. It becomes public art.
Well,
Yeah,
was that the bike, was that the,
Public art, we
the
got-
bike thing, or the?
We got the skate,
But it's all, it's the art at the park.
But safe to schools, I mean, frontage road improvements,
skate
the trail.
But that's all mandated, so really.
Can we?
No, that's discretionary
It was
here.
attached
So
to the
wait a
agenda.
second.
It's
So
in
the
the, in my
Safe Routes to Transit grant is
Oh, I was thinking
mandatory to
further
that
down.
project, but there's a funding shortfall. So I'm seeking
The
capital.
only other
general
thing that might be
capital funds.
rec related, you might wanna put up is the Aid to Go shuttle, number 68, senior center, that's related to the senior center. It's a small amount,
How much?
it's,
130.
131,000.
But you've got the frontage road, trail is definitely,
but there's one real big one you left out, because the Horton Landing Park, those costs are worked into the South Bayfront Bridge, which is a $16 million project, so.
Landscape movements.
So maybe you wanna put that South
think I
Bayfront
put
Bridge,
that as
Horton
a
Landing Park,
major.
$16 million, that's all one big.
48.
Right.
But
no.
is there a funding gap for that?
What?
Novartis
What
pays
number
for
are you
them.
talking?
Yeah, but we're talking about, we're trying to figure out the total investment in Parks and Rec, right?
Not even that so much as, I'm wondering of these, which ones are even potentially on the table for funding or not funding, doing, not doing, that we could express an opinion about that might be useful to the council, right?
Right, so most of them are listed there as
Is that up there,
funded,
Laura?
except for the Bullseye Park.
That should be up there, I think.
We're
Shouldn't
saying
the
to go ahead
frontage,
with all those projects.
Brian, shouldn't the frontage road
Including
Bay
Point
Trail
Emery?
upgrades be on that?
What's that?
list or
Including
no?
Point Emery?
It's in there as recommended
It's
for funding.
recommended for an appropriation.
So
Well, it said, because it said discretionary, I thought
Well,
that
the
was,
city, when it says discretionary, what that means is the city council could choose not to do it.
right.
But we're recommending to do it.
So Brian, there's $220,000 requested for the Bay Trail, frontage road Bay
Frontage
Trail,
road,
I'm
Bay Trail.
assuming that's
Upgrade.
Yeah.
That's
the
parks.
trail there, that's park.
Is that
Oh, yeah, you
Yeah.
can
So,
consider that, yeah.
There's another,
discretionary though? or-
there's another
Upgrades.
question
It's
though,
discretionary, it says here.
of the projects that you listed on the
40.
board, you started that conversation earlier, Amber mentioned it. What already has grant funding that we would have to give away if we didn't fund our portion of the project?
Okay, look, of these, this is all discretionary.
Aid to Go has some, it just dwindles as we go through the years because they want you, the city, to be able to fund it eventually, so.
That's Measure B though, right?
Yeah, but eventually it's gonna go away to, we have to
But
fund.
they did it because they wanna have, you have to, what is it called, self-help or whatever. They want the community to participate in paying for any of the riders or,
Yeah.
they don't want it to be paid for just by ACTC.
So,
So the ECCL north-south connection is, well, of course, it's not a park, but it's connectivity to parks.
Well, the Bayfront Bridge has grant money, right?
No, not at all.
That's the one
It's
that's
all
in
development.
litigation.
That's a.
Oh, that's a
Different
litigation,
parts
so
of the
that's
Bay
a
Trail.
different
Different.
conversation, right?
All
we
these
can't-
projects here, except for the South Bayfront Bridge, everything is looking to me like it's more like discretionary fund. All, mostly general fund money,
Except for the Pelican Park, which we.
except for Palo Park. Right, and that 215 is discretionary money though.
Right.
Right, and
That-
it's
that leverages other money.
potentially coming down even lower if you can get the public, if we can get the public arts to pay for some of the, right?
Yes,
well,
I mean, that's a possibility.
yes.
And the other question is there anything that we left off? Was there anything we didn't talk about or?
because as it stands now, it sounds like this is a everybody wins kind of process,
Yeah.
right? Almost everything you're recommending.
The staff recommendation is that we fund these projects.
These amounts. Including the South Bayfront Bridge.
Oh, of course, yeah.
That's in there.
So okay, put it this way. The South Bayfront Bridge, we're assuming we're gonna win the lawsuit and we're gonna be able to spend it. and we've heard from the city council that it's a very high priority on their list. So if within the next year or two, we find out that we've lost the lawsuit and we need to, if we still want to move forward with it, then all these other discretionary projects are going to need to be revisited. Do we want to do those, or do we want to do the bridge? So that would be a decision we would have to talk about later if we don't get the money.
So,
Right, because you're asking for $9 million and that's
Yeah.
16 million.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
18.5,
Well,
right?
no, I mean, if you, we need another 16 million to do the South Bayfront Bridge and Horton Landing Park. If we don't get that money, if we don't win that money, it's looking like we'll see 20% of that amount roughly. Actually, it's not of that amount. If you go to the project sheet, what
Said
number is it?
something like $2 million.
What number is
It
it?
said we would be short about $11 million, I believe.
So we have, okay, so what's in litigation is about 11 million,
Right.
okay? So if we don't win, we would see 20% of that, so that's,
Which
Right.
is the 2.6
20%.
million.
no, it's not 26. So this-
16 million?
Oh, that's a prior.
We've already spent 2.6, or we actually spent about 2.8 on design, okay? But there's about 11 million that we're hoping to win. If we don't win, we're gonna see 20% of that, so a little over 2 million, right? And then we've got 3 million in bond funds that we could put into it. So we figured out we'd be short about $8 or $9 million.
If you don't get the money
If
from
we don't get the
redevelopment.
money.
And what's the time frame about finding that out? Do
We're
we
gonna
know? We
find
have
more
any
hopefully
clue?
out this year. And that if we find out we win this year, they could still challenge it again. So we really don't know. It's kind of in limbo. So, but that's not a decision we need to make right now. Just, we should know that.
So I have a question, because I do this all the time, in terms of like stepping back. When you look at a list of projects, all of them sound good, right? You guys made good choices, there's nothing on there that's a dog, pardon the pun. And, so the question is, the senior center, correct me if I'm wrong, gets a lot of use, right? A lot of use,
Yeah.
right?
There are about 1,500 people who are members. In addition to that, the second floor, about half of it is city offices.
No, it
They aren't
gets,
even there they're not even there for the senior center, they're just city offices.
right, so it gets a lot of use,
Yeah.
right? A lot of use. The, child center gets less use, right?
people there every day.
No, I mean, just
As far as the number of
big
people using
picture,
it.
big picture.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like seniors and not like kids, so I like them all, but big picture, the senior center gets a ton of use, right? The child development center, is that the highest and best use for that money? And where I'm going with this is, the building probably needs to be renovated, period, if anybody's going to inhabit it, right? So,
The senior
but,
center.
no, the child development center.
Oh.
Because otherwise you're gonna have to say, okay, it's not safe for people to be in here at some point, right? So, of the $750,000 that's set aside for the child development center, how much of that is to make the building safe and how much of it is specific to being used as a child development center? Right? And because, like I said, depending on what those numbers are, if there's a higher and better use for that money, maybe the portion of the $750,000, $775,000 that's set aside to fix that building, if a piece of that, a significant piece of that is what it takes to make it okay for little kids, maybe there's a better way to use that money that's for little kids, than in renovating the building. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like there's some bigger picture conversations that should be had rather than being granular about should we spend
So you're
$10,000
talking,
on this.
just to give you an idea, and Maurice knows better, but at the Child Development Center, I mean, you're talking of replacing a roof because we have a leaky roof.
So that has nothing to do with kids, the roof has to be fixed regardless of who's in there.
Absolutely, that's
Mhm.
right. So the majority of this is structural, so you're talking solar.
So they need it, it's gotta be
So
done.
it has to be done, and there's a lot of interior, it hasn't been painted in,
Upgrades.
I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing with the senior center, leaking roofs.
Well, I say new roof, rain gutters, HVAC
Yeah.
upgrades, solar panels, interior painting, lighting upgrades, earthquake anchoring of furniture and water heaters, as well as miscellaneous operational and maintenance upgrades.
So it's basically for anybody to use the building,
Yeah.
that has to be done, regardless of what the building
That was
is.
a leaky building for me.
Okay.
Well, and now that I understand this a little bit better, I guess it was very useful for us to understand all the projects, but we maybe could have just read the packet very carefully and then talked about the ones that are listed in the unfunded column, because those are the only ones that are sort of up for grabs or that may not get done, and if anybody is really upset that one of them is not gonna get done, then you gotta start thinking about
Which ones to undo?
how can we
Yeah.
trim one of these, right? And of the ones that are unfunded, I mean, the only ones we have up here are the Bullseye dog, it's only 50 grand anyway, and it didn't sound like people were super enthusiastic about that. It's in Oakland. I mean, it's an eyesore area right now that Emeryville residents abut. You know, we're right next to it.
It's a low-cost way of making a pretty substantial
Yeah.
improvement.
So, you know, it would be nice to find some money to do something there, but whatever, okay. And the only other one that's in the unfunded list really is the ECCL North-South connection.
And the idea behind that is it can't be built with phase one of the improvements, so if the city wanted to front the cost now to get it in, that's what the idea was.
Sort of so much money is needed for that, that figuring out what you would take away you start getting rid of some really good projects if you try to raise 725,000. So, you know, I'm not sure that there's much here for us to say other than staff has made good recommendations to you, city council. Please fund every project that
Yes.
staff has identified as important, right? You know,
I mean, are we supposed to prioritize? Like,
No.
if you start
No.
making cuts,
If you make
then
that,
I
you're gonna
suppose we
unfund
could
it.
say, this group is particularly passionate about Point Emery, we've made that known in the past.
And also, it doesn't necessarily have to be 300,000 if it gets to a point where they think that's too much. Hadn't we talked about
We think there's a way to do it for a
possibly
little
doing
less.
it just,
It's just a budget, so,
Yeah. Right.
you know, hopefully we can do it for less. And that's the same for all of these, really.
Yeah.
right, and if they say they wanna cut back on it, we can always,
Yeah.
look to do the
It could be
north side
more.
and just the tip, which, instead of all the way around the west, the entire thing.
But I think that that staff has been very good about leveraging projects with, other
Yeah.
funding.
Right.
And so I would encourage the city council, Ruth, to try to leverage the residents and to say, look, you guys want all this, help us make it happen. And there are other communities that are doing it for not a lot of money, that have said, it's like, it's not a PBID because it's not a business development district, but it's a similar thing. It's like, you guys, if we want to do the 48th, the 36th Street Community Garden, like, okay, everybody in this block, what do you think?
I appreciate what you're saying, Lauren. Last time we went to the voters to try to fund something. it was-
No, I'm talking
It
about,
was, it was the landscaping and lighting assessment district.
I'm
and
not
that
talking
failed
about
miserably.
citywide. I'm not talking about citywide. I'm not talking about citywide taxes. I'm talking about assessment districts for very, very specific things that the only people who will be assessed for it, and they have to agree to it, is the people right there in it. That's what I'm talking about, not citywide taxes, because that'll go nowhere. But if you want to do something, like the guy on Park, you want to do something, talk to your neighbors, we'll work with you, we'll pony up, but like,
I
no way to run the
I
city.
appreciate that you're wanting people to have skin in the game.
I think they should.
Yeah,
We end up with a very uneven city if we do that.
That's right.
You know,
there's equity issues.
Right.
Nobody's saying the city shouldn't do, we're doing a lot. We're just saying, I don't live here, so I don't get it. I practically live here because I'm here a lot, but I don't literally live here, so.
Well, I mean, that's where most communities deal with traffic calming. if you wanna do traffic, I mean, here,
They pitch in.
we did a major traffic calming in the triangle, it's all redevelopment agency funded, we had money back, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of cities don't have that.
I guess
Right.
maybe we have one sort of recommendation is that if the housing committee said, don't put a community garden there, just sell the plot, I think that's a dumb idea, and I would say, instead, let's talk to the residents of the Ambassador and ask them, would you like a park, you know, next to you? Or what would you like? What do you need in this area that you don't have? Is there a better use for this property as maybe a park-type open space? Or maybe they'll say, no, we're good, we wouldn't let our kids play over there anyway, and so then we should sell it, you know?
But
right?
also, if it turns out that there's a lot of contamination there, isn't that potentially
Yeah,
extraordinarily
It's
expensive?
a problem, I believe, is contamination.
Because it's right next to the highway, so I mean, it seems as though there probably is some contamination there. Is that right?
The homeowner whose house is like kind of right there was approached about just buying it, and she's
The
not
one that
interested.
approached the city council, that woman?
I think it's a different person I would think of, but she's not interested. She's not interested in buying it. It's too, the space is awkward, it's kind of this L thing, you can't use it really for parking for, let's say, Ambassador, it's just, and the number of garden plots is only 10. So, but then the gardeners wouldn't have a place to park when they go to their plots. It just doesn't, it just.
How many square feet is that spot?
I don't know, it was 10 garden plots, I don't know.
I think it was 2,000
Yeah, it's a very narrow lot.
2,000.
It's very,
It's very
yeah, and it's
narrow.
awkward, it's awkwardly shaped.
So you could put one small play structure in there, but that's about it, right? So-
Well, and
Pretty small.
Ambassador does have a play structure within the building.
Okay, well then,
So, are we looking for some kind of recommendation on the
I
CIP here? I
recommend that
mean,
we take staff's advice so that we move forward.
that's easiest for us.
Yeah, I think we need to do it that way.
I guess the danger is that when it comes time for it to actually discuss the council, they start cutting into some of these things that we thought were gonna be funded for sure, and we haven't said anything about, well, wait a minute, that was the one that we were
Okay,
most.
then, here's one question for you then. Any projects we didn't think of that you're interested
Yeah,
in?
that would be worth discussing.
And I'll bring one up, because I know you've talked about it before. A
Yeah.
restroom at Temescal Creek, which is not my favorite project. I will,
Yeah, you've put me off here by just thinking that the design is getting funded, and I assume that design is gonna include a restroom.
Not for 17,000.
And I'd like to put it out there too, is one of the things we started to talk about after this list was done, as we explore the park impact fee, is, well, what if there is more money than the gaps in the unfunded projects here? Don't you want to have what you're gonna have your park impact fee fund on the CIP? And is that just a placeholder project that says, you know, we want to develop
Well-
2 acres or 1 acre of park space in the next 5
Yeah, but
years?
you've got all the Parks and Rec, the Parks and Rec plan has a lot of other parks in it. that-
Yeah.
Well, and
There are
related
a
to
lot
that,
of just
to make it,
conceptual locations.
right, a lot of them are, I've just looked through that list
Yeah.
in terms of the impact fee. One that has a specific location with a $3 million price tag associated with it is Anna Yates Playfields, a portion of that site. And that hasn't been described as a possible project, but it leaves a placeholder of about the right amount of money for, and is 1 acre as a project prototype to have the park impact fee kind of have something to go into, if that were the best way to describe it.
No, but that doesn't need to be in the CIP now.
The park impact fee projects, I would think, should be a totally separate thing, because that money, the park impact money has to go towards that. Whereas this is stuff that's really basically things where they're making a decision, are we gonna do this, or are we not gonna do this?
But
I
it
think it
does go to a justification for it, about identifying what it is that we think we need.
Well, then I think, then I would
Yeah, but if we-
identify it as something that we needed if we,
But it doesn't need to be in the CIP right now.
Right.
We can add it later when we do the park impact.
I think that would be a really good future discussion topic for us to figure out what our next round of priorities should be, because
Yeah.
it sounds like there is a good possibility that money will become available. Maybe maybe we won't spend all the money that's there, maybe we'll get the money for the South Bayfront Bridge and everything. So we should be on the ball and ready to say, okay, now that we've got this, what we really want is to have, this, and this.
Well, there will be a little bit of lag time from the time that's proposed until we actually have money to spend, right?
Right, but it
Say that again.
almost.
Wouldn't there be, if the parking fee was approved and implemented, wouldn't there be some period of time before we actually got the money? We wouldn't just suddenly have it approved and
You have to
something
wait,
would
you
turn
have to
over.
save money over a
Yeah.
certain number of
So
years
there
before
are
you have a balance of payments.
Two separate conversations.
Right.
One is, we've got money in hand, what are we gonna go spend it on?
Right.
The other is, we have to, the council needs to make decisions about whether to exact for traffic, housing, or parks, and what will be the balance between those three uses. And so I think it would be helpful to understand the expectation of need after, in that discussion. And so I think that's a separate one from the one you're saying, do we need to know what we're spending on it? No, but maybe aggregating it.
I'm
so
saying,
it'll
I'm
say-
saying as far as this is concerned, I don't think we know, that's all I'm saying.
Can I ask a
But
question?
definitely, we do at some point in the near future.
Chair?
Need to have some idea.
Who's the chair of this committee?
Yes. And I'm,
Let's
sorry, I
talk
got
about-
distracted. So we've passed the 7 o'clock hour, and we need to wrap up
Right,
here.
right, exactly.
And it sounded to me like Betsy suggested that we recommend that the staff recommendations be agreed to by the council, right? That they've already provided you with a very nice set of recommendations for projects to do. Now, this is not,
Trimming where possible.
this is not to
Yeah.
say that in the Parks and Rec, plan, there aren't other things that, we've identified in the past that need to be done, but working with the assumption that this is the amount of money that's available, right, we sort of agree with this game plan. If more money becomes available, we'll be first in line to tell you some more things that you should spend it on. Right, does that sound like the sense?
The only other thing I would suggest about the list is to add all the other unfunded projects that we've ever thought about. So like the other bridge over the I-80 isn't even on here.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was,
Yeah.
to be honest, the reason why they're not in there is it was so much work just to put the projects that we're doing together.
Okay.
And we've got all these other plans.
But we have a
with
whole
some-
committee on that, they did a body of
Right,
work.
so but
and-
those projects are described, and they're in the bike plan, they're all described in
Okay.
the Parks and Rec
Alright.
plan. And so they're there, but they're not
They're
as
not in the
separate.
CI, listed in
Exactly,
the
so
CIP.
but they're as an appendix, that's how we want to
Okay.
Oh, appendix.
So you are gonna put an appendix of
We can- we'll
the
probably have-
strategic plan says we need
do this.
7
Yeah, we
more
can reference them,
parks and-
we'll reference them, that those plans are there, there's more unfunded projects, those are what we were calling the C projects, because those are the ones, we had A, B, and C. A was being the high priority ones we wanted to put right away, B being ones we could maybe, that we could do maybe within the next 5 years if funding were available. And then the C projects were all the other pie in the sky kind of big projects that we really want to do, but
In the future.
in the future.
Can I ask a question about the Temescal Creek Park? So the 17,000 for design
Yeah.
is, if I understand correctly, so the idea would be to connect it all the way through. So from the basketball courts, you would be able to
You can
go
get up to Adeline.
to Adeline.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, that's the idea.
okay.
And so the $17,000 is essentially a quote I got from the architect that did the remodel to come up with a conceptual plan.
And it would be really helpful, we haven't had the conversation, I gave you some information about dog park stuff, but it doesn't make sense to propose that we start adding a lot more, for example, dog parks until we know how highly used Temescal is, and I rarely see dogs in there, in the actual dog run.
I've seen
You
one.
seen them outside the room?
Yeah, I
I've
see.
seen
Yes,
some.
yes, I have.
Every time I
I have,
go,
when I
there's
was
dogs.
there, I,
Are they throwing?
Yeah,
I've
outside
seen
of the
a
run.
bunch of
yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm not there every day, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
still, like,
Sure.
those are really useful things.
Right, so
to
as you know, and
right?
actually it's not
Sorry,
in here,
no.
if I could, I forgot, it's not in here listed because it's being built by the developer, but the Paper Mill Park,
Yeah, that has. a
that's
dog
another
run.
park that's gonna
Right.
go in, and that has a
That
dog
has a
run.
dog.
No, I know.
No, I mean, the strategic plan is an evolving thing. We need to look at it and see how the needs are changing and see what's being met by development as it happens. But I think that one of the reasons that we're here is to keep our eye on the vision of what we want our parks and rec system to be. So I think that it would really be a good discussion topic for sooner rather than later to think about what are the things in here that sound like we should really put them higher on the list.
Yeah, and we need that on the agenda in the future.
And we also should try to attend the meetings, the community meetings, and definitely the city council meetings, so that if it does appear that people are starting to say, well, maybe we shouldn't do this, maybe we should put it into carpeting, or instead of doing this, we'll do that. We can, speak up and say, well, we felt strongly that these areas should be.
Well, here's one thing, since we're saving some money at Pelado, like what's listed is 300 something and we're down to 215. Could we use 50,000 of that to clean up the 43rd underpass and have our Bullseye dog park or whatever?
Make that recommendation.
Sure. And that's only part of the more than 100 grand that we're saving.
There you go. Because that 300 is actually accounted for in the 95 million.
Exactly.
So if you want to save, trim down the 330 to at least 550 to put it in the bullseye. So
Let's suggest that.
That's a good idea.
We're tinkering around the edges here.
But I also think that I don't know how this works in terms of how the city's funds are set aside, but like the marina has a pretty good chunk set aside. I mean, part of it is because they have to dredge and the stuff that is required to do, right? But the parks, we have this great plan for what we want to build, but we don't have a great plan for what we're going to do to maintain it. So maybe one of the things this committee should be doing is saying, you know what, Parks needs its own little, rainy day fund.
So one thing about, and I didn't really cover it in this bullet, there's a bullet here that says, we're recommending a reserve balance of $1 million for unanticipated general capital and major maintenance needs. So we don't want to spend all our money, we want to keep at least $1 million in case the prices go up or there's something that came up that we didn't think of. But then we're going to be doing our operating budget coming up real soon. And in those budgets, they're going to have to reflect all the additional maintenance needs we're going to need as a result of building new parks and everything else.
And on each of your sheets, there are the estimated operating costs associated with the facility.
Okay, then just for clarity then, the recommendation of this committee is the city council adopt the staff recommendations, and with the savings we identified at Pelado, also fund Bullseye Dog Park. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay. Then let's move on to the Gilman Fields update. We're almost done here.
Yes, you are. Brad is going to a meeting on February 19th, so he'll be at the March meeting to give you a report, and we did attach in our agenda packet a schedule so you could see what is actually going on there.
Oh, great.
So you asked for it and they finally got it to us.
I didn't see the schedule. It was in
It's on
there.
the very last,
It's at the end.
it's the very last pages, and it talks about all the different, is it the whole packet?
It's just the CIP stuff.
Yeah, there was,
Okay, right.
the very, very end, it talked about the soccer teams and all the different sports,
So it's the last page of the agenda packet.
those are the last couple pages, yeah. It was a whole color, yellow, red,
It's not in here.
yeah,
Really tiny.
yeah, so.
Is it the attachment that Atika sent?
Yes, it's in your agenda packet, yeah.
Technology is
Water conservation.
not cooperating.
So just a quick update, as you know, we're in a drought situation right now, we're lucky it's raining right now. But the drought really impacts what we can do with our watering of the park. So what we have one landscaped area in the entire city that's plumbed with reclaimed water. And now East Bay Mud has really been hitting up, trying to move forward with their infrastructure to do reclaimed water throughout. When we built most of our parks, we put in the purple pipe that allows you to use non-potable water. But we don't have the pipes in the ground, so
To hook up.
to hook up. So long term, hopefully one day we're going to be able to have that steady source of water. But in the meantime, for this drought, we're looking at our irrigation needs. And there's some landscape areas where we could actually modify those systems to put more drip irrigation in to reduce the volume or the amount of water that we're using. But we're going to be taking on a new park real soon with the Greenway between 59th and just south of 59th, that's gonna be coming on this year, right probably in the peak of the summer. And so we're gonna need to water those plants, otherwise they're not gonna survive. So, we're gonna be talking with our maintenance company that maintains all our landscaping to see what we can do to really trim back on the amount of water consumption we
You're
have.
gonna put drip in there?
In there, it's definitely drip, it's bay-friendly landscaping. It's not like the zero-stage landscaping we put in the triangle where we don't have any irrigation at all, but there will be the ability to water it. But usually when you put in new plants, when
They need water.
they need water to get them started and
Yeah.
established, so.
Sometimes I see water trucks come shoot out stuff in water trees as they go
Yeah, I
along.
know.
So, you know,
Is it
as we, yeah, and what we're gonna be trying to do is, when it gets really the heat of the drought, we're probably gonna end up going to, connect to the reclaimed water source and just fill up our water trucks to be able to water some of the areas with reclaimed water, where possible.
How many water trucks do we have?
We have a Vector truck, and then we also have a little wagon that we call it.
Is there any way to determine how low you can go with water before everything just really dies and has to be replaced?
Well, we might wanna make a decision, do we wanna continue to water Door Hollow's lawn? If you don't water it, it tends to go dormant, and then once the rains come back, it'll come back green.
It's a fescue.
It's a fescue, yes.
Yeah.
But, so that might be a decision we need to make later on in the year as we see how things go.
Has a lot of wear and tear.
Gets a lot of wear and tear.
It shows the wear and tear on that grass.
It gets a lot of wear and tear. In fact, now that it's wet, we might wanna post no people on the park, because, on the lawn.
I recommend that.
Because really, it needs a
It's
time
gonna
for it
get
to recuperate.
wrecked.
Well, the only way to do that is to block it off.
Yeah.
It's
but-
hard, it's hard. Especially when
You know how the goat grazers have like, I'm not saying an electrified fence.
Uh-huh.
But they roll it out, you can just like fence off the lawn for a while.
With some sheepguard,
It
sheepdog.
would
Yeah.
signs, it would
Sheep guarding
minimize the
dogs.
usage.
Yeah.
Just some
The orange
simple signs.
construction tape is used at Cedar Rose.
Essentially, now that it's wet, we might, we were waiting for it to rain back in December, and we were gonna actually close it off for a month. But now that it's wet now,
That's a
we
good
might want
idea.
to.
Give us some rest.
I think it should get a rest. It'll
Is
get
that a
wrecked.
park that should be considered for turf instead of grass?
Too big, huge.
Not at this point.
Yeah,
We're
really.
not, it's not a sports field.
Okay, then, any agenda items for next time? It sounds like we want to start at some point a discussion of the things that are in the park plan that are not realized yet, and start prioritizing them in the event money became available.
What was the email that we received with the links to the musical instruments and
Oh, yeah.
and the restrooms, and it said, be sure to
Yeah,
read
review
it and be prepared to discuss it?
I
What
just
was
sort
that?
of
I
sent
wasn't
them
sure
off.
I wasn't sure who brought it up and what we were supposed to be considering it for.
I just think that when we start to see some of these park improvements, we need to add other things besides just play
A
equipment.
play structure, right?
Yeah, a play structure, and so I sent those off just as ideas.
So
when-
it wasn't
when-
connected to the CIP?
No, when Maurice would bring a park to us, we could have some input and say, let's add these musical instruments or something. It's just different, right?
Yeah.
It
So,
also sounds like we need to
Dresses it up.
continue to talk about the 36th Street parcel.
Yeah,
I don't wanna call it a community garden parcel.
right,
okay.
We need a good solution for that
yeah,
area.
So this
And
is
we don't
a
have
March
one
meeting.
yet.
right.
So the impact fee may be
March.
in March.
They'll let me know.
Right.
Except we said April only because we thought you didn't.
And to honor Lauren's request, maybe we should talk about assessment districts. And as part of the whole funding mechanism that they were talking about.
Well, and, you know, in general, we could try to become experts on play structure equipment, not just the musical variety that we looked at the links this time. But, you know, most of these folks who manufacture playground equipment have catalogs, and so we could request all those and
I've got a bunch.
look
yeah.
those around, look at them, so that the next time we are replacing a structure, I feel like we've generally done a bad job choosing play structures in the past, right? That,
Oh, the big, if we replace it, we've gotta get professional that knows all the clearances and everything.
And
Yeah,
the
the
codes.
codes.
And then you're limited to your space, then.
Yeah.
Right,
So
'cause
I'm
you can't-
going to the CPRS conference in March, and I will bring back,
Bunch of
there's
junk.
tons of stuff, always about play.
Well,
And most of it's online, so maybe you
Yep.
could just send the links and people
Yep.
can browse
I
at their
can do that
leisure.
too.
Yeah.
there are also, you know, I mean, you do landscape stuff, I mean, like, there are lots of ways of doing things that kids like to play on. I mean, you guys have probably taken your kids to Adventure Playground, right? There's no
My
structures
kids
there.
love
So,
going.
you know,
Yeah,
there've
that's
gotta be
great.
things that
They
we can
absolutely
do,
love it.
They all-
like
yeah, mine do too.
berms and,
Yep.
you know, salvage
creative.
boulders and, you know, it doesn't have to be a play structure.
Yep.
Yeah, that
Great.
place is.
It's way
free,
more
basically.
interesting
Yeah.
to not have
Yeah.
everything be play structures.
Berkeley,
It's in the Berkeley
what's it called?
Marina.
Adventure Playground.
Adventure Playground.
It's an adventure. You smash your
awesome.
fingers there.
It's awesome. But the other thing is that with the new greenway coming online, is there any room to discuss with them plant choices so we can do
Not at
less
this
watering?
stage, they're ready to build, they're really.
They're raring to go.
Yeah, they're raring to go. I mean, it's
Are
been
they
all
getting-
reviewed by
they're getting
Bay-Friendly
big-
landscapers, so it's
Okay,
all.
so they're getting bay-friendly rated?
Oh, yeah, that's all part of it.
Okay, as long as it's, you know, we're making decent choices before we plant things that,
It's been, that was a big controversy.
May die 'cause they're thirsty.
The Bay-Friendly raider was happy.
Okay, if there's
They can be sticky.
no other future agenda items, any other final staff or committee member comments?
Just one thing, Atika is gonna be leaving us, she's our front desk person.
No!
She's got a job in Ventura County with the Water District, and that's sort of her career. And so her last day will be February 27th.
That's a big move.
Okay,
Her family's also down south, so this is moving her closer to her, back towards her family, so we'll just letting you
how can we create a position that pays her more? Force her to
know.
stay.
I know, so anyways,
She knows
that's my only
everybody's
comment.
names.
I know. She's been here a year. I was like, no, but yeah, it's a good career move for her though.
Yeah.
All right, is that it?
Then with that, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.